No one visits this side of the shelter anymore. Not since they moved the newer dogs to the front, where the bouncy tails and bright eyes are. Back here it's quieter, dustier, forgotten, and in the farthest corner, under the flickering light that buzzes like a tired heartbeat, lies a German shepherd with fur like ashen eyes that once burned with fire. He doesn't bark. He doesn't move. He just waits. People pass by, but he doesn't lift his head. He stopped hoping, stopped believing. But today, something strange happens. A man walks in, tall, wearing an old green hoodie and shoes that look like they've seen too many roads. His name is Elliot. He's 41, a mechanic from a small town in Oregon who hasn't stepped foot in a shelter since the accident. He isn't looking to adopt. He's just walking, or maybe running from a memory too loud to silence. As Elliot turns to leave, he hears a soft rustle, a whimper, and then something he didn't expect. The dog, this lifeless, silent dog, lifts his head. His ears twitch, and then he starts shaking. Not out of fear, out of something else. Recognition. Elliot freezes. He turns. Their eyes meet, and in that moment, everything from the past rushes forward like a storm crashing through silence. But how could it be? How could a dog believed to be gone be standing right here, trembling, staring back at him with eyes that once knew his voice? Elliot takes a step forward. The dog flinches, then crawls slowly, almost painfully, as if every inch of movement is a war between trust and memory. And just before Elliot kneels down, tears fill his eyes, because now he knows. He knows exactly who this dog is. But how did they get separated? What tore them apart? And what happened to this once proud companion who now hides in shadows? What happened to Bruno? You're not watching this alone. Thousands are watching, feeling, remembering. Tell us where you're from in the comments. And if this story made you feel something real, like it, share it, and help it reach someone who needs it. 2 years ago, Elliot's life was whole. He lived in a quiet neighborhood in Bend, Oregon. His days were simple, working at the garage, drinking coffee on the porch, and coming home to Bruno, a German shepherd he raised from a pup. Loyal, fierce, gentle, the kind of dog that didn't need a leash because his heart was tied to yours. They went everywhere together. Camping trips, fishing by the lake, long drives where Bruno would rest his head on the window, eyes half closed, soaking in the wind like it carried memories. Elliot wasn't just a dog owner. Bruno wasn't just a dog. They were survivors of each other's loneliness. Elliot had lost his wife in a fire 7 years ago. Grief became a roommate, until Bruno. And then one night, everything broke. A storm hit harder than expected. Roads flooded, power out, panic rising. Elliot had taken a wrong turn on a mountain pass trying to rush back home. The truck swerved, tumbled. When he came to, Bruno was gone. The passenger door flung open. Paw prints lost in the rain. He searched for weeks. Every day. Posters. Calls. Shelters. Tears. He blamed himself. And eventually, stopped talking about it. Stopped hoping. Until today. Until this moment. And as Elliot stood there staring at the dog who once saved him from the dark, he realized Bruno had been carrying his own shadows, too. This dog, once proud, alert, full of life, was now broken in ways Elliot couldn't yet see. Scars behind the ears, ribs just a little too visible, a limp in the back leg, like life had taught him not to trust anyone who got too close. And yet, even now, even after everything, he had remembered his voice. Elliot knelt down slowly. Bruno. The dog's ears twitched again. But he didn't leap, didn't wag. He just stared, as if trying to believe this wasn't another dream that would vanish in the night. Elliot whispered, "It's really me, buddy." And for the first time in 2 years, Bruno took one step forward. One step toward the voice that once meant home. Sometimes healing takes time. Sometimes all it takes is one voice. And in this moment, if you're watching from anywhere in the world, let me ask you something. Have you ever lost someone and thought the story was over? Type your country in the comments. I want to know where you're watching from, because stories like this, They happen everywhere, to people like you, like us. And if this moment made your heart ache just a little, if it reminded you of love, of second chances, or of someone you miss, take a breath. Then hit that like button. Not for me, for the ones we still believe are out there. Maybe this video finds someone who needs to hear it. Maybe it saves one more Bruno. And if you believe in stories with hope, in endings that start again, stay with me. Because what happens next will melt your heart. The shelter worker stood back, watching the scene unfold like she wasn't supposed to be part of it. Her name was Hannah, 29, soft-spoken, and the only one who didn't believe Bruno was just another lost cause. She stepped closer and gently whispered, "You know him?" Elliot nodded slowly, eyes locked on Bruno. "He's my dog. He's my family." Hannah's breath caught. "You're that guy? The one from the posters? 2 winters ago." Elliot looked up, surprised. "You saw those?" She gave a sad smile. "They were all over the Tri-County rescue boards." But then silence. "We thought you gave up." "I did," Elliot said softly, voice cracking. "I just didn't want to admit it." Bruno took another step forward, and then another, but his body still trembled, like every inch toward Elliot was fighting against every scar he'd earned. The bruises were gone, but the fear stayed. Hannah knelt beside Elliot. "He hasn't moved like this for months. He won't eat when we walk in. He just stares at the wall." But now he was moving. Still slow, still cautious. But the way his ears lifted, the way his paws inched across the floor, it was like watching a flower bloom after a long, bitter winter. Elliot reached into his jacket pocket. His hand trembled as he pulled out a faded blue tennis ball, Bruno's favorite, the kind with bite marks and years of memories. He placed it on the floor gently. "I kept it," he whispered. "I don't know why. Maybe I couldn't let go." Bruno stopped. He looked at the ball, and for a moment the weight of survival fell away. His tail twitched, barely, but it moved. Elliot smiled through tears. "That's it, boy. You remember." The shepherd's eyes were glassy now, not just from memory, but from something deeper, recognition maybe, or grief, or love that had waited too long. And then, a sudden movement. Bruno lunged, not in fear, but with desperation. He pressed his head against Elliot's chest, hard, like he was trying to melt into him, like he was trying to make sure this wasn't a trick of light or sound. Elliot held him like he never wanted to let go, and he didn't. He buried his face into the shepherd's fur and cried. Loud, messy, broken sobs that had waited years to come out. "I thought I lost you," Bruno whimpered, the kind of cry that sounds like apology, like relief, like every emotion a dog can feel but can't say. Hannah had tears in her eyes now too. She didn't try to hide them. "I think he waited for you," she said quietly. "Some dogs. They just know when someone's still looking." Elliot pulled back slightly to look Bruno in the eyes. "We're going home." But Hannah hesitated. "There's paperwork, procedures. We have to follow." Elliot nodded, understanding. "I'll do whatever it takes." He stood, and Bruno stood with him, still leaning on Elliot's leg, unsure if this was real, but not willing to let it go. And as they walked toward the front desk, people stared. Volunteers stopped what they were doing. Phones were pulled out. Quiet gasps filled the room. Not because it was dramatic, but because healing was happening right there in real time. A man and his dog, finding each other in the most unexpected place, after time had tried to convince them it was over. They called it the miracle at Maple Ridge Shelter. But for Elliot, it wasn't a miracle. It was love, unshaken by time, distance, or even the worst kind of silence. 3 days later, the adoption was finalized. Bruno was no longer case number 117. He was Bruno McLeod again, son of the mountain trails, the campfire nights, and the kind of loyalty that never forgets a voice. Elliot's house hadn't changed much since Bruno left. Same porch swing, same ticking clock on the kitchen wall, same faded photo of his wife on the mantel. But something in Elliot had changed. He didn't realize how empty it had all become. until Bruno stepped inside and brought it back to life. At first, Bruno was hesitant. He paced. He sniffed every corner like he was walking through a dream. He stood at the back door for hours, not quite ready to go outside. Like the world had been cruel once, and he wasn't sure if it still would be. But Elliot waited. Every moment. Patient. Gentle. He spoke softly, never raising his voice. He slept on the couch for the first few nights, just to stay close. Sometimes he'd wake to find Bruno curled beside him, nose tucked under his arm. Then came the flashbacks. Late one night, thunder rolled across the sky. A summer storm. Normal for most people, but not for Bruno. Elliot watched as his friend, this once fearless shepherd, cowered under the table, body shaking, eyes wide with old terror. Elliot got down on the floor, lay beside him, and whispered, "You're not out there anymore. You're home." He stayed there until the storm passed. Bruno didn't move, but he didn't run either. It was the first sign that healing had started. One afternoon, Elliot pulled out an old photo album. He flipped through memories of hiking trips, Christmas mornings, muddy paws on white bedsheets. Bruno lay next to him, head resting on Elliot's thigh. There was one photo Elliot kept pausing on. Bruno, 3 years younger, chasing his wife through a field of sunflowers. She had her arms wide open. The dog's tongue flopped out as he ran toward her like joy was something you could taste. Elliot closed his eyes. He whispered, "You were the last piece of her I had left." Bruno didn't move, but he let out a quiet, tired sigh. A sound Elliot hadn't heard in years, the sound of safety. Later that evening, as the sun began to fall behind the hills, Elliot took Bruno to their favorite trail, the one by the river. They hadn't walked it since the accident. Bruno hesitated at the trailhead, but Elliot looked down and smiled. "We do it together this time." Step by step they walked. The trees whispered. The wind carried memories. And Bruno's tail, still cautious, began to rise, just slightly. When they reached the old wooden bench overlooking the water, Bruno sat down beside Elliot, the way he always used to. Quiet, present, unmoving. And for the first time in 2 years, Elliot let himself breathe. "I lost you once," he said. "But this time, no matter what, we finished the story." Bruno turned his head and their eyes met. This was more than reunion. It was redemption. For every day Elliot thought he failed him. For every moment Bruno felt abandoned. For every second they both believed the story had already ended. And in the fading light of that day, they both understood something without speaking. Some souls are meant to find each other, even if the world tries to tear them apart. Even if it takes years. Even if it hurts along the way, they find each other because love, the real kind, doesn't forget. It doesn't give up. It waits. And when the moment finally comes home. Recovery didn't happen overnight. Love returned quickly. But trust? That had to be rebuilt. Bruno had seen too much. Hunger, cold, strange hands, cages. He flinched at loud noises, slept with one eye open, barked at his own reflection some nights. Elliot didn't push. He understood what it meant to carry invisible wounds. He knew what it felt like to look fine on the outside, but be shattered inside. One morning, Elliot tried to take Bruno to the park, just like old times. But as soon as they reached the gate, Bruno froze. He wouldn't step forward, wouldn't even sniff the grass. His tail tucked in, his body stiffened. It was the leash, the same kind they used at the shelter. Elliot didn't say a word. He sat down right there on the sidewalk next to him, letting people walk past, letting time move slowly, letting Bruno decide. 15 minutes passed, then 20. Finally, Bruno sat beside him, didn't move, didn't look around, but he stayed. That was enough. At home, Bruno started following Elliot room to room. Not in fear, just quiet attachment. Like he needed to confirm this was real. That Elliot wouldn't disappear like everything else. They fell into new routines. Short walks, slow meals, soft music, long silences that spoke louder than words. Still, some days were harder than others. There were nights Bruno would wake up barking. running to the front door as if trying to escape something that wasn't there. Elliot would find him, gently lay a hand on his head, and whisper, "It's okay now. You're safe." He kept the lights low, kept the house warm, kept the words kind, because love doesn't rush healing. It just stays present. One weekend, Hannah, the shelter worker who had witnessed their reunion, came to visit. She brought a small gift, a hand-painted wooden sign that read, "The dog came home." She smiled as she handed it to Elliot. "Not every story gets to end this way, but yours, it gives people hope." Elliot nodded. "It gave me hope too." They hung it on the front door, a reminder that even broken things can be made whole again. Not perfectly, not quickly, but honestly, through patience, through presence, through the kind of love that doesn't ask for anything in return. And slowly, Bruno's eyes softened. His bark came back. His playfulness returned in quiet, goofy bursts, like chasing leaves or stealing Elliot's socks and hiding them under the couch. Each small moment was a victory, each day a step forward, not back to who they were, but toward who they were becoming, together. 6 months later, a soft snow blanketed Elliot's front porch, the same porch where he once sat alone, night after night, wondering if the best parts of his life were behind him. But this time, Bruno lay beside him, head on Elliot's foot, eyes gently closing with the kind of peace you don't fake. The scars were still there on both of them, but they had turned into something else. Not reminders of pain, but proof of survival. Elliot watched the snow fall and smiled. "You know," he said, scratching behind Bruno's ears, "I used to think the story ended the day I lost you." Bruno opened one eye, just for a moment. "But maybe," Elliot continued, "that was just the beginning. That winter was different." Bruno no longer hesitated at the door. No more flinching at shadows. No more pacing the hallways at night. He had found safety again. But more than that, he had found joy. He'd trot into the kitchen when the coffee started brewing. He'd nudge Elliot's arm every morning as if to say, "Hey, we've got another day. Let's use it." Elliot even started a small Instagram page called Bruno Came Back. He didn't care about likes. It wasn't for fame. It was for reminders that loss doesn't mean gone. That broken can still be beautiful. That a second chance is sometimes just a voice away. People from all over began to follow. Veterans, shelter volunteers, people grieving, people healing. They shared their stories too. Dogs who waited, people who searched. Moments of reunion that felt like poetry. And in a world that sometimes feels cold and loud, Bruno became a quiet light, soft, but steady. On the anniversary of their reunion, Elliot took Bruno back to the shelter. Not to drop him off, but to thank them. He brought biscuits, toys, blankets. He donated in Bruno's name. And as they walked through the rows of cages, Bruno stopped at one kennel and stared. Inside was a small, trembling pup. Thin, frightened, ears drooped. Elliot knelt down beside Bruno. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" Bruno didn't bark. He just wagged his tail. And just like that, the story opened a new chapter. Because once you've known what it's like to be saved, you don't forget how to save. Some stories remind us how powerful love can be. But stories like this, they ask us to act. Because right now, somewhere out there, another dog like Bruno is waiting. Waiting in silence, in fear, in hope. Maybe they've been forgotten. Maybe they've stopped believing anyone is coming back. But you can be their second chance. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to show up, just like Elliot did. Because sometimes the most life-changing thing you can give someone is your presence. So if this story touched your heart, don't let it stop here. Share it. Let it echo into the lives of those who need to hear it. People who've lost, people who've healed, people ready to believe again. If you've ever loved and lost, if you've ever found something you thought was gone forever, then you know what this means. You understand what second chances feel like. Let that feeling move you. Stories like this remind us that no matter where we are, we feel the same pain and the same hope. Comment your country below. And if this moment touched you, Hit like and subscribe, because kindness deserves to be passed on. One voice, one story, one saved life at a time. Thank you for watching, and trust me, the world needs more stories like yours.